get out. Give us a moment. All right. Thanks for joining us today here in Spokane. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I'm Deputy Communications Director Dan Jackson for the Governor's Office. We're pleased to be joined by the Mayor, statewide elected officials, a number of legislators, and heads of state agencies to be here with you today. I'll briefly go over the speaking order, and then I'm happy to turn it over to Mayor Brown. So it'll start with Mayor Brown, and then the Governor. Major General Welsh will speak, then Commissioner Cruderer, Treasurer Mike Pellecciati, and then in the end, Commissioner Upthegrove. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a rough 10 days in Spokane. It's hard to believe that we evacuated nearly a quarter of our population in a few hours. And of course now, as people are returning, the evacuation levels are changing. We understand that hundreds of homes have been lost and thousands of people have been displaced. But we're not alone in this. Our region has been affected, counties, tribal nations, our neighbors to the north in Canada, and east and south in Idaho and Oregon. During this time, I guess the best way to express it is we are so grateful for everyone who is out there helping everyone. I was at the 5 Mile Shopping Center yesterday with the Red Cross and Spokane Fire, and we were answering questions for families and distributing supplies, and I encountered 3 families whose homes were lost. And each of their situations were very difficult, very different. One individual had 6 family members and a small business in the home. One couple had already set up where they're headed to next and who would rebuild their home. And one woman was still full of a lot of questions. But they all had something in common. When I expressed my sympathy to them, they all said, "No, Mayor, thank you. Thank the first responders. Thank everybody who's helping out." And they all told me what they had. And they said, "I bet there's folks who don't have what I have. Please help them." So I just want to express that spirit that I know is here with us today and throughout our region. As soon as the fires began, the recovery begins, and it's a complicated multi-agency process. But you can see everyone pulling together to try to navigate this as effectively as we can for all the people who are affected. Governor Bob Ferguson was on the ground immediately with his team working on the federal emergency declaration, and now he's back with his cabinet, statewide agency directors and electeds, and here to talk about some of the next steps of the process. And as I turn it over to Governor Ferguson, just want to acknowledge where we are. We're in Spokane City Hall. Our motto is, "In Spokane, we all belong," and we're being looked down upon. We're in the Chase Gallery by one of our most beloved former mayors, Mayor Jim Chase. And I draw upon the spirit of Mayor Chase and all those others who came before, who gave so much for the city and the region. And now I turn it over to Governor Ferguson.
Thanks so much, Mayor. Appreciate it. First, Mayor, thank you. Not just for allowing us to have this press conference here and hosting us, which we deeply appreciate, but I think I can speak for folks throughout this community for your leadership during, in the long history of this wonderful city. I imagine there have been few occasions that have been as challenging as the past days, and it's just been, I've just really admired your leadership during that extraordinarily challenging time. The people of this city appreciate that. That's what I hear when I'm out talking to folks. And so thank you for your leadership and your partnership as we work through this. Thanks to all of you for being here as well. We appreciate you taking time. Let me just start by saying yesterday late afternoon, I visited a neighborhood devastated by the by the fire. And I think just before I got there, the neighborhood, I think it just opened up. So as it turned out, a few folks were actually there in the neighborhood. I had the chance to, and really the honor to meet with first responders, firefighters from California. We have a number of states helping us out, and of course from Washington State, and I expressed my deep appreciation to them on behalf of the people of the state of Washington for their truly extraordinary service. I met with homeowners. It ranged from a homeowner who, her home was one of the very few standing in that neighborhood. Just 2 doors down, maybe 3 doors down, there was a retired couple who had lost their home, and they were there, going through the rubble of their home. When talking to that couple, really what I was most struck by, I think, Mayor, and talking to them at some length was, and they've been at home for a long time, and I said something like, what a loss it must be to lose your home, something like that. And they said, it's interesting, they said, well, losing the home, of course, is awful, but what they said was losing the community is worse. By the community of people in that neighborhood, the friends they made over many years in that community, which I was struck by that. And maybe I shouldn't have been, but for them, it was, the home was devastating, but losing that community, they just talked at length about that and specific neighbors and experience they'd had over many years together. And it's our job as elected leaders to our best to try and help rebuild that community as quickly as we can and help folks who are really under extraordinarily challenging situation. I visited the convention center today. Thanks to the Red Cross, my goodness, those folks do incredible work, incredible work. In the neighborhood I went to yesterday, each home had a big blue box there, and it was provided by the Red Cross. And what it was materials folks could put on, masks, protective gear, to go through the rubble of their home, which is not, always so safe. And I just was so impressed that was right there for every single home that was already there waiting for them. And I think it's fair to say that meeting individuals on the ground, at the convention center, folks who have temporary housing there, or folks in neighborhoods, that's obviously only strengthened our resolve collectively to do everything we can to help people in this community and across many communities in Washington State who are deeply impacted by fires. I want to emphasize the very strong partnership between all levels of government to address the situation we have across many communities in our state. I especially appreciate the very quick action by the federal government on multiple fronts. I'll speak more about that a bit later, and we'll also discuss that we'll soon be seeking a major disaster declaration to unlock financial assistance for individuals. So I'll speak a bit about that at the end of my remarks. As governor, my job in this situation, one of my jobs in this situation, is to make sure we are unlocking all the resources that state government can provide to help people during this time. We're joined today, as the mayor said, by elected leaders and leaders of many state agencies who have all been working hard to address this situation. So we're here to share updates and developments regarding the state's response and the resources we are providing. I think when we were at a press conference, Mayor, I think a week ago today, actually, I mentioned, look, we're in for the long haul on this as a state, and nothing's changed in the last week. We're in for the long haul, but this is a next step. There will be updates to my announcement today as time goes on. We want to provide an update to the people. On the morning of Saturday, August 1st, I signed an emergency proclamation that implemented a burn ban across Washington State through September. Today, I just signed an amended emergency proclamation. And this emergency declaration, with one exception, which I'll mention, applies to individuals impacted by fires across 7 counties and 3 tribal nations. The counties are Chelan, Ferry, Okanagan, Spokane, Stevens, Douglas, and Yakima. And the tribes are the tribes, the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakima Nation, the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, and the Spokane Tribe of Indians. The actions in this new emergency proclamation will help impacted Washingtonians and businesses by waiving and suspending certain state laws during the emergency. There are numerous actions, so I'm going to divide them into 3 categories. Those are for individuals, laws we're waiving and suspending that will help individuals, those that will help businesses, and those that will help folks related to healthcare. I'll move very quickly through these because there's a lot of them, but I do want to touch on them at least very briefly. So first, for individuals. Many Washingtonians, as you know, have lost literally everything, including critical personal documents like their driver's license, ID card, birth certificate, and vehicle and vessel titles. The Department of Health, working with the Department of Licensing, will be on site at the Emergency Disaster Center at Shadle Park High School to help Washingtonians obtain new copies of personal documents at that location. Licenses, ID cards, and other Department of Licensing records will be available today. Vital records through the Department of Health will be available starting tomorrow. My emergency proclamation requires that there is no charge for this service for anyone who's impacted by the fires. My emergency proclamation also enables the Department of Licensing to grant extra time for people to renew their business and professional licenses. This includes, for example, licenses related to cosmetology, notaries, real estate, security guards, and numerous other professions. So check your professional license, see if it was issued by the State Department of Licensing. If so, contact DOL to see if you qualify for an extension if you missed your renewal deadline because of the wildfires. Washington State has an important program called the State Individual Assistance Program for individuals who have lost their homes during a declared emergency. My emergency proclamation makes everyone without insurance who lost their home eligible to receive this assistance regardless of their household income. Washington State also has the Family Emergency Assistance Program. It provides cash assistance for families with children during a disaster. My emergency proclamation extends this program to include families without children. Typically, that Family Emergency Assistance Program is only available for families once per year. My emergency proclamation allows families impacted by wildfires to access this program each month if needed. State law requires that in order to get unemployment assistance, you must wait 1 week before getting benefits. My emergency proclamation suspends the waiting period so Washingtonians out of work due to the wildfires will receive their unemployment benefits immediately. Normally, individuals receiving unemployment benefits also must prove each week that they are actively searching for a job. My emergency proclamation suspends the job search requirement for those impacted by the wildfires. The wildfires have, of course, created a housing crisis for many Washingtonians. My emergency proclamation prohibits eviction-related actions to keep Washingtonians housed during this challenging time. The proclamation limits the ability to serve or act on eviction orders for the next 2 weeks unless there is an immediate health or safety risk or unless the tenant received a full 9 days notice in writing of the owner's intent to occupy or sell the property. Washingtonians across the state have taken in neighbors, friends, and strangers during this crisis. Their generosity should not put them in danger of eviction. My emergency proclamation prohibits landlords from evicting their tenants for hosting people and their pets who have been displaced by wildfires. That part of the proclamation extends statewide. Current law allows landlords to take possession of property that's been abandoned without an eviction notice. My proclamation prohibits landlords from utilizing this tool when a resident had to leave because of the fires. Now I'm going to turn to the part of the declaration or the proclamation that relates to health care. Healthcare providers, is an understatement to say, play a critical role in providing care during an emergency, and they should not have to worry about renewing their licenses right now. My emergency proclamation enables the Department of Health to grant extra time for healthcare providers to renew those licenses so they can continue providing care without worrying about having to file paperwork. Medical assistants provide essential basic health care. Normally, they must have a supervising provider physically present at all times. My emergency proclamation waives that requirement as long as the supervising provider is immediately available. This enables assistants to provide important healthcare services without delay. Hospitals are facing staffing shortages as the local workforce is directly impacted by fires and evacuations. My proclamation waives the requirement that hospitals document and verify providers' clinical privileges. This temporary waiver will help facilities add and retain healthcare providers quickly during the emergency. Healthcare facilities, including hospitals, need to quickly stand up alternative care sites during emergencies. My proclamation waives state laws regarding the construction of new healthcare facilities in fire-impacted areas. In an emergency, hospitals need the flexibility to provide care at alternative sites. To add flexibility, my emergency proclamation waives the requirement that hospital licenses be only for the specific premises named in their original license application. My proclamation also waives a similar requirement for pharmacy licenses, allowing them to operate at alternative locations. My proclamation waives the requirement that pharmacies must display their licenses to further remove barriers providing medications to Washingtonians. And the proclamation waives restrictions on admissions and capacity limitations for adult family homes and assisted living facilities, and temporarily suspends certain paperwork requirements so that these facilities can focus on serving residents who have been displaced by the wildfires. Now I'm going to speak briefly about my emergency proclamation that will assist businesses. During an emergency, essential supplies to communities and firefighters must move as quickly as possible. My emergency proclamation suspends the rules limiting the number of hours that truck drivers can be behind the wheel as long as they've had enough rest. Impacted businesses should not be penalized with fees for filing taxes late. My emergency proclamation waives those late fees for employers who can't file or pay their second quarter 2026 taxes on time because of the fires. Rebuilding homes lost to fires should be as streamlined as possible. My emergency proclamation directs state agencies to submit reports within 30 days of today identifying statutes, regulations, or building code provisions that can be waived or suspended to streamline state regulations and permitting requirements for people who are rebuilding. The mayor and I just had a conversation about this before this press conference. Obviously, working with local jurisdictions have their own rules as well. This is a complex undertaking, but really determined to streamline this process as much as possible. The National Guard and the State Guard remain on state active duty to help fight the fires and keep us safe. You'll be hearing from General Welsh momentarily, and we're deeply appreciative of their service. So this covers the items in my emergency declaration, but I want to emphasize that the team you see behind me and many others who could not make it today, we're still working, going through state statutes to see what should be waived or suspended. We invite community members, business owners, or anyone who knows of a state regulation or law that's getting in their way right now, let us know so we can take a look at that, go through the legal process, and see if that's something we can change to help folks out. I want to conclude by just saying a few words about our work with the federal government. I think I mentioned earlier how appreciative I am that the federal government has responded. Quickly is not the word. I mean, they've just been on it. I've had proactive outreach from multiple cabinet members to ask how they can help. And that means a lot to us in a really challenging time. We especially appreciate the administration moving so quickly to grant our emergency declaration request. We also appreciate Secretary Kennedy last week granting our request for a public health emergency for these areas. That public health emergency allows providers to increase access to health care for Washingtonians on Medicare and Medicaid in those areas. This makes a huge difference for folks during emergency, and we appreciate the federal government stepping up quickly to make that happen. One thing I just really want to emphasize with the media here and for the people is there are essentially two big asks we have of the federal government to oversimplify things a little bit. The first is that immediate disaster assistance, which they have granted. Okay, we asked and they granted that. The second is a request for a major disaster declaration, a totally different request. Okay, and the major disaster declaration, that is what unlocks significant financial assistance for individuals and for municipalities. Two different things, two different processes. So I'm just going to speak for a moment about the upcoming request we'll have for major disaster declaration. We don't have a deadline yet, but we probably will soon. We anticipate our deadline will be around mid-September. We'll obviously let you know once we have that deadline. The request is a major undertaking. It is a lot of work in a very short period of time, and it requires local governments to detail the damage to individuals and to those municipalities in their areas. The mayor and I have spoken about this already. The mayor is already on it, as are other jurisdictions. We as a state, we take that information, put it together, and make the request to the federal government. We deeply appreciate that when we had the historic floods last year, that the federal government granted our request for a major disaster declaration. I'm very aware that these major disaster declarations are not always granted. And so we are determined to make our case as compelling as possible. This will require the personal involvement of numerous elected officials and community leaders throughout Eastern Washington, specifically to share their perspective with the federal government in particular if they have contacts with the federal government, to demonstrate how devastating these fires have been in our communities and to urge the administration to grant our request. I'll just conclude by saying in order to get a major disaster declaration, we need to meet several requirements. We must show the scale of the disaster is beyond our ability as a state to fully respond. We have to confirm we've taken appropriate action as a state under our emergency plans. In coordination with local governments, provide an estimate on the amount and severity of damage to the public and private sector. I know I'm asked, and I suspect the mayor's asked, hey, what's the damage so far? This will be our time to say, hey, here's the amount of the harm that we can estimate of the disaster in central and eastern Washington. We must describe the resources utilized to alleviate the disaster and provide preliminary estimates on the types of assistance needed. I am confident we'll make a compelling case for each of these criteria, and we're already hard at work on making this happen. I appreciate your patience. I went through a lot of items there, but I did want to detail for folks here in the community and across this part of the state the level of detail we're engaged in. Again, I want to emphasize this will not be the last, I suspect, change to our emergency declaration. We continue to evaluate what we can do to streamline things for folks. And with that, I'm going to turn now to General Welsh, who will speak about the National Guard's involvement, and again, deeply appreciate his leadership and the work of so many National Guards folks who have just been, I've met many of them, and they've been truly heroic and been a huge help in assisting many, many Washingtonians. General.
Thank you, Governor, and certainly thank you, Mayor, for your extraordinary leadership. You have clearly met the moment in a time that demands leaders that do meet the moment. I'm Major General Gent Welsh. I wear really two hats. One is the state's Adjutant General, and two, as really the overseer of all things emergency management in the state. So I'm going to speak to you today really from both of those lenses. So today, as the Mayor said, we're on day 10. We are on day 10 of really a tragedy, just really unimaginable destruction. Spokane took a punch in the gut. And what you're seeing out there is a community that is absolutely reacting to that, neighbors helping neighbors, and really the whole of government response here that you see behind you. So when you have a tragedy of, I would call, industrial scale proportion, you absolutely need a response of industrial scale proportion. That response requires an industrial scale response from the federal government, which the governor just outlined. What you're seeing behind me is the response, the industrial scale response from the state government. The mayor is here, local officials, tribal officials. That is the industrial scale response that you should expect from the team that is talking to you today. But to the individuals, this is also going to, individuals affected, this is also going to require an industrial scale response from you. As again, someone that has gone through a house fire in my past, there are going to be a lot of bad days ahead. There are going to be some good days. But let me tell you this, you need to absolutely commit yourself to today. You need to make today better than yesterday, and you need to make tomorrow better than today. You're only going to get through this event, if you're affected by this thing, one day at a time. Small wins are the name of the game. So let me tell you, you've got a lot of challenges ahead of you. Some of you may not even have ID. You may have to prove for the first time in your life who you are. You may have to go get a new ID and prove that you don't have documentation. You may have to go through that process. It's very painful. That's even before you go through the process to rebuild the rest of your life and your house. It's going to take some time. Do not quit and do not become paralyzed. You will go through a range of emotions as you're going through this process, but please, 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 your families are depending on you, your community is depending on you. Do not let this get you down and keep driving on. So moving on to the National Guard response. So the governor sort of outlined some of the things that we've done in Spokane, but I'll come to Spokane at the end, but let me really outline what is going on across the state from a National Guard perspective. So moving from west to east. So right now we've got about 105 firefighters on the Little Giant Fire. These are National Guard firefighters directly supporting our colleagues at the Department of Natural Resources. These folks, 2 weeks ago, were not expecting to be on a fire. These are your citizen soldiers, citizen airmen that are out there firefighting, because every National Guard firefighting crew that you see out there frees up a DNR fire crew or some other U.S. Forest Service fire crew to do the more important work out there. So it's important work. We appreciate our partnership with DNR. Coming now towards central Washington, we have quite the helibase. That's a helicopter base up in Deer Park. We've got another one in Wenatchee. These are aviators that for 14 days straight get up every morning and do nothing but fly helicopters, slinging buckets of water, putting fire out. I was just up at the Colville Tribal Reservation last week, heard story after story after story of tribal members whose homes were absolutely saved by those big green helicopters with two rotors up there. Those stories happen in Spokane as well. I've seen a number of pictures, but those are aviators that are putting their lives on the line. We just lost a civilian firefighting helicopter in Utah this past weekend, but please keep them in your prayers. Landing here in Spokane. So really for the past, really since this event kicked off 10 days ago now, we have had National Guard traffic control points and in many ways assisting local law enforcement, keeping folks safe out of disaster areas, really freeing up local law enforcement to help get back to their day jobs of law enforcement. But we've been able to pull those traffic control points back. There are still some in the county. My understanding is by maybe today or tomorrow, we could be out of the traffic control point business. What that does is it frees up a lot of National Guardsmen to do other things, do other priority things in this community. One of those things that we just started today and the governor mentioned is actually working hand in hand with our Red Cross to scale up rapidly those different kits that are arriving on homeowners' what's left of their home doorsteps. Those are kits that are going to help keep you safe. They have all the Tyvek suits, a lot of PPE, but your National Guard is going to be out there now working in communities. You may see them wearing a uniform like me, but doing what needs to be done, helping our Red Cross partners, and really scaling that up as long as we need to. But again, emergency management is an absolute team effort. You've got a dynamite team here behind you. It's been an absolute pleasure to give back as much as I can to this community. And I'll be followed by Commissioner Patty Cooter.
Thank you, and thank you, Governor, for bringing us together, for your leadership, and Mayor Brown for hosting us, and for your leadership too. So my role is overseeing the insurance industry in our state and ensuring that Washington consumers are protected. Since the governor declared a state of emergency last weekend, I have issued 2 emergency orders to help protect policyholders impacted by the fires. The first requires insurers to grant premium grace periods for policyholders impacted by the fires and prohibits them from canceling them if they can't pay the premium. The second one orders health insurers to allow people on early prescription refill, grants a grace period for paying premiums, and protects people from being canceled if they can't pay their health insurance premium. I also asked the insurers to bring their response teams to Spokane to help expedite payments and speed up recovery. And they answered that call within a couple of days. And last week we had 14 insurance companies on site at the Disaster Assistance Center, along with team members from my office assisting people with their claims. And I'm very grateful for the insurance industry's response and for their willingness to show up quickly. As for us, we brought our teams of insurance experts to help people navigate their insurance and the claims process. Our consumer hotline is also available 5 days a week, and you can chat with our insurance experts online and file complaints if needed. I want all wildfire survivors to see our office as a resource. We will continue to support you and provide help during the recovery process. We are working on setting up some workshops here to help policyholders understand every step of the claims process, and we'll share more information about those workshops in the coming days. And going forward, we're going to continue pushing our policy options in the legislature that help people fortify their homes against wildfire damage and to increase the information you get from your insurer about your wildfire risk. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Treasurer Mike Pelliciotti.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Cooter. Obviously, thank you to the governor for bringing us together and for all your leadership. And obviously, thank you to the mayor as well. But a particular appreciation, obviously, to our first responders and to the Red Cross officials who I actually had a chance to meet with earlier this morning. I think it's probably fair to say among the statewide elected officials, there probably are few, if any, that have a closer personal connection to the city of Spokane than I do. I went to Gonzaga. My mother lives in the Indian Trails neighborhood, and so this is a particularly personal impact that I've had, the family's had, but also a particular appreciation that I have for the people here in Spokane. My mom was one of the first people to evacuate when the fire was coming through the Indian Trails neighborhood. I really appreciate the coordinated effort by the first responders who, in a rather miraculous way, allowed everyone to evacuate efficiently from that area. But I also have a unique appreciation for the stress that's been put on families over the last little more than a week. And I know what it was like watching the Watch app as information was being provided, the containment of the fires that was being dealt with by the first responders. And obviously, my mom's neighbors and friends who've lost houses over the last week. And so I have some sense of the anxiety that they have been feeling and continue to feel as they have to navigate the challenges that now are the next phase, as we were hearing from the general, to be able to move forward as a community. So, as state treasurer, I've been meeting with emergency officials, starting to get a better understanding of the federal funding flows and other aspects to make sure we keep money flowing in and around our state related to this. But I particularly appreciate, as we address these issues, especially flow of money between government, appreciate Commissioner Cooter's work on behalf of individuals and related to insurance claims for individual funds that are taking place. But there is obviously a lot of work to do. And again, particular appreciation for the governor of the really effective coordination of all statewide elected officials and other officials here in our state to make sure that the needs of Spokane are being met and we can continue to move forward as a state and as a community. Thank you. I'll turn over to Commissioner Upthegrove.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Upthegrove. I have the pleasure of serving as Washington State's elected Commissioner of Public Lands, where I lead 2,200 mission-driven employees at the State Department of Natural Resources, the agency tasked with leading wildfire suppression efforts. And it's been well said already that what this community has gone through has been heartbreaking, but the response from first responders, firefighters, community members has been extraordinary. And Mayor Brown, you're not only Spokane's mayor, you're Washington's mayor right now. And I've especially been impressed and really pleased to work alongside a governor who is, I have seen the sincere personal passion for helping folks in this community, and your leadership in pulling everyone together has been invaluable. I was at Incident Command again this morning, and we're making significant progress in getting these fires out around Spokane. Just a few days ago, firefighters were chasing fast-moving fires. But today, the work is increasingly shifted to securing the perimeter and methodically finding and extinguishing those hot spots. There are a lot of hazards still. It's very dangerous, and there's a lot of work still left to do. But the fact that even during difficult wind events this weekend, the fire didn't grow is a sign of the progress that's being made. I've said throughout this crisis, preparation doesn't prevent every disaster, but it changes the outcome. Long before smoke appeared in the air above Spokane, people were preparing for a wildfire season we knew could have challenges. We were pre-positioning equipment and resources, entering into mutual aid agreements, training up National Guard troops before we even knew we needed them, engaging in forest health and fuels reduction work, and working with homeowners and communities to build more resilient landscapes. None of that can prevent every loss, but we're seeing here in Spokane that those investments matter. As the immediate fire threat recedes, DNR's role changes, but it doesn't end. The broader work of helping families and communities rebuild increasingly shifts to emergency management, local, state, and federal partners. DNR's focus moves towards rebuilding the lands. That's assessing erosion, flood risks, landslide risks, impacts to watersheds, and determining what the landscape needs to recover. And we will be here for the long haul. Washington is in the middle of an extraordinary fire season. As we stand here this morning, there are 21 large fires burning over 539,000 acres. And we're continuing to see new fires emerge, including a significant fire near Mount Rainier. All told, over 700,000 acres have burned in Washington state, and we're only halfway through this fire season. We have a long way to go. That's why I need your help. Don't be the spark that starts the next fire. Please follow the burn bans. Please be extra careful with anything that could cause a spark. You know, we've asked a lot of our firefighters this summer, and one thing every one of us can do for them is to help make sure they don't have to fight another fire. They're doing their part. Now it's time for us to do ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And with that, we're happy to take any questions. I have a number of folks from our agencies here who may assist me in asking any questions as well.
For the Commissioner and for the Mayor, there is the emergency declaration, sorry, the insurance commissioner. I forgot there's more than one. We have the order that you've signed. How concerned are you in the coming years that what happens in places like California with insurance is pulling out completely or writing off policies years from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or making them prohibitively expensive for the remaining homes? How concerned are you that that will happen here?
Well, it's always a concern whenever you have a situation like this that the perception of risk goes up. And of course, we can't force insurance companies to underwrite a risk. But what we can do is work to reduce the perception of the risk, which was the focus of the couple of bills that we had before the legislature last year. And I want to give a shout out to Senator Riccelli for prime sponsoring one of the most important ones, which was a wildfire grant mitigation program, which would help people with resources to fortify their homes against wildfire, which would improve insurability. So, you know, we're not in the situation that California is in, and that's both in terms of companies leaving the state and also in terms of our FAIR plan. But I don't want to get there. And I think we need to be much more preventive in our approach, and we have to be much more strategic in our approach. So we're looking at the pockets of non-renewals and cancellations around the state, and we're looking at this pilot program working in those areas first to improve insurability and keep the insurance industry strong and competitive here in Washington.
Did you want anything on that? Okay. And I'll just add briefly to that important question. The Commissioner and I have had a chance to chat about this, really appreciate her leadership on this issue. You know, I know when I had a chance several days ago now to meet with leadership of the Colville tribe, much of our time was spent on this issue of insurance. I don't think it's an exaggeration, it might have been half the time that we had a long conversation. And so I've had that with other Washingtonians as well. So I think it's fair to say in the 5 months we have before this next legislative session, I think, as the Commissioner mentioned, and obviously the Senator's involved, we've got a bipartisan group of legislators who are here, which I appreciate, from different communities who are impacted by the fires. I think you'll see a continued conversation around that specific issue, and so more to come on that. Thanks. Other questions?
This is a question for Mayor Brown. Housing is Spokane, availability has been an issue for this tragedy. What's being done to ensure there's housing availability to maintain to be relocated to and making sure they're priced appropriately for the individuals who make these. Well, I would say the presence of the governor here today and the statewide electeds is part of the response to that. We will definitely be looking to the legislature and to the Department of Commerce with regard to existing funds that assist people with housing. But the work is already underway. I very much appreciate the focus on adult family homes because we did have very many individuals who were living in adult family homes. When I visited the convention center, there were dozens of very medically fragile adults, and my team and the Red Cross team, the county team are all working together to try to get all those individuals rehoused. We know that short-term rentals are tapped right now, that hotel rooms are also at very high capacity. We will be doubling down on a case-by-case basis, helping people relocate in the interim, but then also I think we're going to hear within 30 days from statewide electeds about the variety of things we can do to expedite the construction of more housing at all levels in Spokane. And we appreciate past legislative bills such as parking to people, that I know our legislative delegation worked on, and even before that, Senator Billig, to create incentives, and we were the first in the state to take advantage of that incentive, but conversions of office buildings and/or parking lots into housing is something we very much encourage, and our team will put together the current incentives and help you create the capital stack possible to make those projects pencil out. And we particularly encourage that downtown, close in urban neighborhoods where we have infrastructure. We'll do everything we can to help make those projects work so that we can get that housing underway.
And I'll just maybe add a little bit to, in addition to what the mayor said, and obviously agree with everything she had to say. Maybe a couple points to add in addition. So, number one, on issues related to the situation right now when it comes to housing, I've asked Denny Heck, our Lieutenant Governor, to help lead our efforts on this. So Lieutenant Governor Heck is outstanding public servant. On my transition team, he was a part of it, and he led the housing group that looked at recommendations for changes to state law, for example, to assist on making changes to address the housing crisis we have. So I appreciate the fact he's willing to do that work, and so he's meeting with my team and others as well to address not just the rebuilding, but also we understand folks are displaced as well. So I think you'll be hearing more from us in the coming days and weeks on that as well. Number two, thankfully, and due in no small part to the bipartisan group of legislators who are with me and many others, in just my first year and a half as governor, I've signed 2 budgets. That biennial budget, that combined biennial budget, we made a truly record historic investment in housing. The mayor sort of alluded to that. So funds like the Housing Trust Fund, we've made record investments. So we actually have resources available to see if we can reprioritize things in a way that makes sense given a disaster. So as you might imagine, these things take a little bit of time to work through. It's a complex process, but that's why I've asked Lieutenant Governor Heck to help lead that process. We're working with partners like the mayor and other folks as well, and so anticipate having more information soon on that. Thanks. Yes.
The Major General described this as a gut punch, these fires. Can you just put into historical perspective how destructive these fires have been in the history of Washington State?
I mean, I'll try. What I would say is that, and I'm pretty sure just about anyone standing here would say the same thing, that words feel small, right, in the face of a disaster of this scale. Someone's going to start with that. And it's difficult to find the right words to capture it. That said, as some people know, I spent a fair amount of time reading about Washington State history. I have a deep interest in that subject. And by any measure, the fires we're experiencing generally, as Commissioner Updegrove mentioned, I've heard him say this at other press conferences, look, we are likely heading for the tough reality. This may be the worst fire season in Washington State history. And that's saying something, okay? And that's saying something. Number two, look, you can't look at the images of what's happened across the central and eastern part of our state without truly being stunned by the magnitude of the disaster, right? And, walking through a neighborhood yesterday, I thought I was prepared from the many, many images I've seen, the many videos I've seen, that we've all seen all across the country. I thought on some level I was kind of prepared for that, but until you literally walk down one of those streets, you're not quite prepared for it, I think is fair to say. So from a historic standpoint, I think I said at the beginning, for this community, undoubtedly this will have to go down as one of the greatest tragedies in Spokane's history. There's no two ways around that. And I think for this part of our state, zooming out, it is going to, unfortunately, potentially be, our most disastrous fire season of all. So, right now, while I'm aware of that, I think what I would say is, speaking for myself, at least I think I speak for others, the focus has to be what's right in front of us, right? And to try and solve as many problems as we can as quickly as possible, to try and remove as many barriers as we can as quickly as possible, try and get resources out as quickly as possible. So I'm pretty laser focused on that, and I've instructed my team to be very laser focused on that. But I suspect when it's all said and done, it'll unfortunately go down as a truly historic disaster for our state. Yes.
As you guys put together that major disaster request,
Yeah.
have you managed to narrow in on a figure for how many people actually lost their homes? Because we keep hearing that estimate of 921
Yeah.
structures damaged or destroyed, but do we know how many people have been impacted by that?
Mayor, are you able to speak to that? I'm not, you go ahead.
I don't know that we are. I will say that we're collecting that information, and we welcome people, even just calling 311 in the city and saying, I'm one of those people. This is my name. This is my contact information. And at the same time, at the Disaster Assistance Center, that information is being collected. We've collected it from each individual that in the evacuation center. And keep in mind, we know I'm speaking not just on behalf of the city here, but the county emergency operations center and numerous community partners that have stepped forward and are helping people. So we don't have it all tallied yet. It's safe to say it's thousands of people impacted either by loss of their residence or in other significant ways. But we will be doing that type of work over time to pull all that information together and also to help navigate the right resources. I have immense gratitude for all the community partners. There are really too many to single anyone out. So many businesses, nonprofits, faith-based organizations are all kind of pulling together and taking a piece of this. That's going to be very helpful in the short term, and as we move into the long term, we'll probably call on you again, and I know that you will answer that call.
And I'll just add that I understand the deep interest in getting a precise number, but I know you all appreciate how there's a lot going on right now and folks doing the best they can. What I will say, when we do make our request for that major disaster relief, that will be a lengthy document. It is very detailed. It is a lot of work to put that together. And so it'll be a very detailed document that that we will be communicating to the federal government as well as we can at that point, the scope of the harm and the damage, and that'll be in fairly stark and fairly specific terms.
Is there a sense of the type of discussion that maybe with the legislature, both to respond to this fire and just perhaps additional funding to combat natural fires?
And just to make sure I heard it right, I think you're asking what the feeling is from the state legislature. Sorry to have you repeat that.
Is there a sense on the type of investments from the state legislature
Oh,
to combat this fire as well as additional fires?
So the question went to, hey, is there a sense that as we go into a legislative session, what the investment might need to be from the state with a legislative session on addressing this? No, it's too soon to say. I think we'll have a much better idea of that once we file our request for major disaster relief, because that by definition requires us to put that all pen to paper and submit that. So that's why folks are literally working around the clock now to compile all that information. So I think it's fair to say that, I don't want to speak for other legislators, but I feel comfortable saying this, I think, is that we're all very aware of what's going on. And I think we all understand the different priorities we have as a state with this upcoming legislative session. The aftermath of this disaster is obviously on that list, to be sure. And so, but what the scope of that is, it's just, it's too soon to say right now.
Governor, do you mind if I-
No, absolutely. Marcus, go right ahead. Sorry.
So, State Senator Marcus Riccelli from the 3rd District in Spokane. I just want to recognize, too, you see a number of my colleagues that could be here today, both sides of the aisle, and I can tell you pretty confidently that we're committed to get every penny back that we can to make sure that we provide the recovery we need in this community.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Yep.
At the State Department of Natural Resources, we have responsibility for not just fire suppression, but prevention and preparation. And first of all, we don't have numbers yet, but I think we will see historic costs for suppression. And those are the costs that we're spending to fight the fires on state lands, and that is essentially a bill that goes to the legislature. Investing up front in the prevention and preparation work is one of the ways long-term to lower those suppression costs. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen the benefits of the investments that have been supported by the legislature and the governor. And moving forward, it's going to be important to continue to expand that work, whether it's making sure we have the equipment on hand and pre-positioned, making sure we have the resources to do fuels reduction and forest thinning, as well as working with property owners. Those kinds of investments are making a difference here in Spokane, and the long term, they can help bend that cost curve down.
And maybe just one thing I'll add to what Commissioner Updegrove had to say is he and I have had many conversations and meetings in the past 10 days, as you might imagine. And one thing that I previewed with him was, hey, I have a budget proposal coming up, and so we've not had a chance, obviously, given what the priority is right now. But I just previewed, hey, we're going to sit down with our teams and talk about, hey, what's possible in my proposed budget in light of what's happened here, and any lessons learned from what happened here that can go in that proposed budget. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, it sounds like Commissioner Updegrove is going to address that one. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Based on what we know now, I don't believe there's reason to believe that the timing of that particular grant impacted the outcome of this fire. But I don't want people to get the wrong impression. Investments in forest health and fuels reduction matter. We've seen them slow the spread of fire, make it easier to defend homes, make communities more resilient. And that's why DNR has worked so closely with our federal partners, like the Forest Service, as well as tribes, local communities, individual property owners, to expand that work throughout Eastern Washington. And that's work that matters, and it's work that needs to continue to expand. One of the things that struck me during this crisis is how people have pulled together. It's that same spirit of partnership that has allowed us to, build healthier forests, safer communities, and that's the kind of partnership we need moving forward.
Any final questions folks have? That's right, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Are you able to speak to that, or general? I'm not sure if. So Robert is going to, if you don't mind introduce yourself, Robert, would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Izell, Director of Emergency Management for the state, and we've got a team coming together right now between FEMA, the Federal Emergency or Environmental Protection Agency, and the state Department of Ecology to address just those things. So the team is in the process of forming, and over the coming days and weeks, they'll be building and implementing a strategy for that.
I'd say a little bit.
Absolutely, go ahead.
So this is one of the most challenging aspects of recovering from a fire, and we've already reached out to other states and places, and it is a complicated process. It relates to removing the initial hazardous material that's there, and as was mentioned, that is a conversation that's going on right now about how to do that as efficiently and effectively as possible. But beyond that, there is ash. There are requirements around testing for asbestos in order to determine where that ash can go. And there is the issue of where to take everything. So the city of Spokane is involved in those conversations at the state and national level. But I just want to throw out a public health announcement here. Please go to our Regional Health District website or our City of Spokane website and get the information. Depending on how close your home or residence was to a burn area, you have different levels of risk. And I know we're all experiencing a certain level of risk because of the air quality. And so the need to protect people, especially vulnerable populations and children, from the air is something that is going to be an ongoing issue for us in our region. But for particular homeowners, please consult those trusted sources and act with extreme caution in terms of how to do the appropriate work in your home, and also give us a chance to talk about a plan for the removal of the toxic material and ultimately the amount of debris removal that is going to have to take place, because that plan is being worked on right now. I guess I would encourage people not to just do it yourself until you hear about the plan, because it could, there could be a safer and more cost-effective way to get that work done.
So I know the folks here are happy to, if you want a one-on-one question afterwards, are happy to speak with you. So I want to wrap up by thanking Mayor Brown, who I've known for many years, and I think that close partnership and friendship is served us well, and just really echo what everyone has said of how much we appreciate. Do you have any final words, Mayor, before we wrap up? And I'll just conclude by saying, my first job after law school was here in Spokane, which I loved. Last night I stayed at a hotel, which is unusual. If I'm in Spokane, I always stay at a friend's house. I didn't stay there this time because that friend was evacuated, and they're currently in the west side of the state staying with family. So I know the area, the neighborhoods pretty well that were impacted. In 2 weeks, I'll be here on a personal reason, moving my son into a dorm at Gonzaga. So there'll be a Ferguson resident here in Spokane. So, I just say that to say I'm, deeply invested in this particular community. I really appreciate the mayor, your leadership here in Spokane with the really unique challenges here. And just conclude by saying every person you see here and many who couldn't make it, we're in for the long haul. That we understand folks are going through an extraordinarily challenging time, and that's an understatement. And we're just here to help for as long as it takes. We'll keep coming back for as long as it takes, and just really appreciate all of you being here today as well. Thank you so much, everybody.